John Steinbeck was born in Salinas, California, in 1902, where the valley lies broad and green, and the ocean wind slips through lettuce fields and artichoke rows. That valley would be my first classroom, my lifelong character, and often, my antagonist. I did not set out to be a spokesman for anyone. I simply tried to listen, and to tell what I heard. I grew up the son of a mill manager and a schoolteacher, with 3 sisters and a shy boy's habit of wondering. The Salinas Valley taught me early about cycles, planting and harvest, hope and disappointment. I hauled sacks, listened to ranch hands, and learned the plain poetry of their speech. School could not compete with the drama of fields and canneries. Yet I read greedily Mallory and Milton, the Bible and biology, London and Twain. Words felt like tools, useful, heavy, and capable of building something real. At Stanford University I studied in fits and starts, enrolling and departing, never quite finishing a degree. I wasn't in love with classrooms. I was in love with stories. Between odd jobs, labour, caretaker, clerk, I practiced sentences on cheap paper, characters overheard in pool halls, scenes hammered out in borrowed rooms. I failed often, and I learned to treat failure as tuition. The 1920s tested my stubbornness. I worked as a caretaker at Lake Tahoe, writing by lantern light, and later in Los Angeles and back in Northern California. The checks were small and the rejections steady, but I kept listening, to sardine men on the Monterey waterfront, to field workers bunked in shacks, to scientists observing tide pools by lamplight. When my early books drew little attention, I held my course. Stories must be earned, not demanded. Then the world I'd been circling began to speak louder. On Cannery Row I met Ed Ricketts, a marine biologist with a philosopher's patience. Ed taught me that tide pools were a kind of democracy, where the humble and the strange make an ecosystem together. From his lab came talk of ecology, Bach, Bay, and mercy. Our friendship shaped my method. Look closely, refuse sentimentality, and recognize that everything touches everything else. If my books ring with companionship, with flawed men seeking decency, it is because Ed played bass in the band I tried to conduct. I once overheard a ranch hand explain that he traveled with a big, strong companion who wasn't bright but was good. In that blunt phrasing I heard a small tragedy. Of mice and men grew from it. 2 drifters, George and Lenny, chasing a fragile dream of a little place of their own. The book was short because the life it depicted was clipped, pressed, and starved. When readers wept, I knew they recognized something true, that dreams are not frivolous. They are rations for the spirit. The 1930s brought drought to the plains and humanity to the road. Families in jalopies, mattresses strapped down, hope tied with rope. I traveled the migrant camps of California, listening to the low talk at night, the coughs of children, the arithmetic of hunger. The Grapes of Wrath was not meant to be a pamphlet. It was meant to be a chronicle. I wrote quickly, like a man carrying a hot coal, so the heat would not cool. When the book appeared in 1939, it was praised and despised, banned by some, embraced by many. But the people I wrote about knew whether I had told it straight. I measured success by their judgment. A year later, the Pulitzer Prize found me. Prizes are pleasant. A nod from a peach picker is better. During the Second World War, I served as a correspondent. War compresses time and distorts language. It makes bravado cheap and tenderness day. I saw courage in men who couldn't pronounce the word. I also learned how propaganda, like mold, spreads in the dark. The 1940s were not kind. My marriage broke, and then another. I wrote Cannery Row, a valentine to the odd and the overlooked, and The Pearl, a parable about greed's quiet violence. In those years, personal grief and public fury braided together. When a writer's gaze lingers on the poor, some accuse him of politics. I tried to keep to the narrower road, write what is there, not what is wished. I wanted to write a book for my sons, something that bent back toward the valley of my youth. East of Eden became that book, a family saga, yes, but also a meditation on choice. The Hebrew word timshel, thou mayest, caught me. If we may choose, then we are not condemned to repeat our worst selves. The Hamiltons and the Trasks, Salinas and the Gabilon Mountains, virtue and malice, these were the opposing winds that filled my pages. I wrote with the ache of memory and the labor of a farmer tending a great field. In 1960 I took to the road with Charley, my dignified poodle, to see my country without the filter of fame. We drove blue highways and talked to waitresses, mechanics, ranchers, and retirees who leaned across cafe counters. The America I found was restless, proud, generous, anxious. I loved it more for its contradictions. A writer should be a friendly spy. In Travels with Charley, I offered my field notes from a nation still inventing itself each morning. In 1962, the Swedish Academy called. The Nobel Prize in Literature is a magnificent embarrassment. It praises one man for the toil of many. The editors who argued with me, the friends who told me the truth, the nameless men and women who trusted me with their stories. I accepted in their name and went back to work. A medal cannot write a sentence, a deadline can. With fame came louder criticism. Some objected to my plain style, others to my subject. But I had chosen long ago. The human scale, the workaday voice, the flawed heart trying to do right. I kept faith with that choice. I have always believed that stories are tools for mercy. They do not excuse evil, but they widen the circle of understanding in which justice can be conceived. My craft has simple rules. Listen longer than is comfortable. Cut the fine phrases that serve only the writer, and keep one's attention on the people who cannot afford a publicist. If I wrote about tramps, migrants, whores, philosophers, and mechanics, it is because I found in them the same hungers I found in myself. To be seen, to be useful, to be forgiven. Companionship saves us from our meanest selves. George had Lenny. Mac had document. I had friends who tolerated my silences and my tempers, and a wife who steadied the late years. Love is not a theme. It is the current carrying every page downstream. Without it, the boat scrapes bottom. America has always been a contradiction searching for a sentence. We believe in individual liberty and in neighborly duty. We love winners and root for underdogs. I tried to catch that unstable compound on paper. The arrogance and the kindness, the appetite and the generosity. When I wrote of the poor, I did not mean to scold the rich. I meant to remind us that we rise or fall together, like an orchard under one weather. A writer does not need courage to face critics. He needs courage to face the blank page and tell the truth as he sees it. If the truth angers, let it anger. If it consoles, let it console. Sentimentality is unearned emotion. I try to earn mine with witness. If you find my pages simple, it is only because I rewrote them until the extra fingers were cut off. By 1968 my body had grown tired, though my mind still wandered the lanes of Salinas and the alleys of Monterey. I thought often of the valley fog and of the way sunlight pools in the furrows after rain. Death comes to all. Stories outwalk us. If my books endure, I hope it is not because they were fashionable but because they carried a little truth in a plain bucket. If I have any last statement to make, it is this. I wanted to write about people whose names are not carved into marble, whose graves sink back into the earth without a fuss. I wanted to show that their dreams are as binding as any contract, that their sorrows are heavy enough to bend the world. If, in reading me, you feel kinder toward someone with little power, then the work has done its work. I was born in a valley and I wrote of valleys, between wealth and want, between cruelty and compassion, between despair and the stubborn, mulish hope that tomorrow we might build a little place of our own. My name is John Steinbeck, and these were my roads.